Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today, we're joined by Robyn Foyster, who is the founder of InProfile, which is a thought leadership marketing platform, as well as a number of other things. Editor-in-chief of Women's Weekly, and I'll let Robyn introduce the variety of things she's currently up to. Robyn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew and Anthony. Lovely to be here.
I appreciate you coming on. Let's dig in. Just share to the audience a little bit about you, your background, and some of the things you're involved with.
Yeah, so my background really is as a journalist. I started many years ago at AAP, Reuters, and then went to London and America and worked in TV and newspapers, and till eventually I came home and worked as an editor of first the Australian Women's Weekly, and then later group publisher of all the women's magazines at Bauer, and which used to be ACP. And then about 5 years ago, launched my own media business, and I now have a number of different websites in my Foyster media business. So I have the Carousel, which is a lifestyle site for women. I have Women Love Tech, which is a tech site promoting women in STEM. And then I have Game Changers, which is really where I tell the story of entrepreneurs, and we film it's like a multimedia platform. We do podcasts, we do filming, and everything, and that's been going for about 4 years too. And then only last year did I launch InProfile, and InProfile is specifically looking at thought leadership and building the clients that I have, their brand. They tend to be people who are already leaders in their industry, and they really need to get their expertise or want to get their expertise and share it with the outside world. So that's where I really focus now.
There's a lot going on there, Robyn.
Big variety.
Yes, it is a big variety. Very interesting background as well, a bit of TV and media, and quite extensive roles there. So based on why did you start InProfile? What was the purpose for you? What was the reasoning for you to do that? How do you think that is, or how is that adding value to current customers and clients, and how do you imagine that going forward?
Yeah, so really what happened with InProfile, it really came out of COVID. So before I was working on filming and telling the brand story of various entrepreneurs through that platform, Game Changers. And then when we stopped being able to film, I realised actually that what I was doing was really sharing the stories of these people who are leaders in their field, and so. And I was already working on thought leadership anyway. So then I decided that was really going to be my focus, and I, built it up as a new business called InProfile. And I straight away, had a number of leading business people who basically they're time poor people who have really got to sort of become leaders in their field, and they want to share their expertise. And basically that is the definition of a thought leader, someone who is who has built up a lot of experience in their area, and they want to share it. And it's really, like once you reach a certain level, I think that's a great thing. And from sharing this fantastic information, that they, rather than holding it tight, I suppose in the dev world, it's like an open platform, isn't it? I know when when you share your source code, it is the same type of analogy, really, where you're sharing your source code, you're sharing your what would have been secrets, and people are less sort of like tight with that information these days, and actually quite willing to share it. And the effect of sharing it is very positive for the thought leader, because one, they're building themselves up as a known, for their being known for and building their own credibility. It helps them, provides them with a tool to engage with their peers and also the people who are coming up through, climbing the ladder in their industry. will recognise them as leaders in the industry and probably want to work with them. So it also helps companies attract a greater, more talented pool of people. And so that's really what thought leadership is about. It's about really, it's really sharing your secret sauce material, and in return, you gain a respect and probably and obviously there's a respect that you deserve in the industry as leaders in the field.
With a more traditional, as I say, marketing approach, is the biggest benefit is it's probably building brand and reputation better, going down the thought leadership path, as opposed to constantly selling or telling people what you can do,
and that's
how to help or how they can do it themselves.
That's right. So in thought leadership, you're not really asking for stuff. You're really sharing and giving, and we've seen this really change in the approach in marketing over time, where it used to be the hard sell in marketing. I'm great. You should buy my services.
No one really cares. There's so much noise, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Rather than that, engage them with sharing some of your knowledge. And it is rather what, like you and Andrew and Anthony, you are both doing with your podcasts. You're providing a platform to share to your audience, information or stories from people that you're interviewing that they hopefully can benefit from, and
Yep.
that's thought leadership, at its core. And you're not doing the hard ass and saying, and by the way, guys, you should, come and let us do the work for you. But they get to know you, and they get to see that you're credible and that you're genuine. And guess what that's going to do? Increase your business, because people are going to be interested. I'm interested.
Yeah.
We all need people to help out with dev.
We started on this journey, what was it, 2019? So it was a pre-COVID thing, and it was done out of our office, which we no longer have anymore. So everyone's working at home. And I think we started from perspective of just, that sort of was. It's all about how we can help and serve and give information to people and just sort of protect them on the journey of creating technology businesses. And we had 5 people come to us in the space of about a week in October, and Anthony and I had a chat, and I said, we need to do something. They basically spent $1 million or so plus dollars building tech, and they all failed. And we thought to ourselves, we're a small little group in Melbourne. How many of them are there out there? And there's plenty. It's a tough space to really build out new technology and product. And that's why we do it. And we get to meet great people like yourself just to share different thoughts, perspectives, and how you might approach business. And thought leadership is definitely one area that, yes, I agree you need a lot of domain knowledge and expertise, but how would one start the process of becoming a thought leader if they don't have the expertise? What would you recommend there? It's probably a different take on it, but what would you think there if someone's starting out looking to get a brand without pushing the marketing channel or just selling their product?
Well, so first of all, you if you're going to be a thought leader in the first place, you have to have some sort of expertise. It's sort of part of being a thought leader. So you can obviously build yourself towards being a thought leader, and often what's sort of recommended is that the things that you're very passionate about and the things that you learn about and build and acquire knowledge on, they're the likely things that you'll be able to be a thought leader on. So obviously, if you love your job and you're really interested in learning more about it, that knowledge that you build and acquire is something that you could share and start becoming, a thought leadership. So you can actually develop it. And I would recommend that everyone really looked at their LinkedIn profile and have a think about what their own personal brand is and where they want to go with it, and what they want to be recognised for. So it's a really useful thing to, just it's not a vanity thing at all, but it is worth Googling yourself and seeing what your digital footprint is, and start there and think, okay, so there might be nothing, and that's fine. You might be that person who doesn't want anything, but if you're a thought leader, you are actually wanting to build your profile, and so therefore the start really is sorting out your first probably digital footprint for most people in business is their LinkedIn platform. So really obvious things to do. And I've had people that I've looked at and they've, had a picture of themselves with wearing sunglasses, and yeah, and, sort of just saying that they're a mum or a dad. And, that's not really the platform for LinkedIn. You really need to think about what your brand is in terms of your working life. And for that, it can be used very successfully, and you can change it all the time. So, change your picture, update it. Don't have the blue background. Put something a bit more exciting. Effectively, you're a content creator. This is where I step in with InProfile, is that I help people shape that. But you can, do it yourself as well. You can, if you get a LinkedIn premium package, they actually do courses on LinkedIn. There's amazing things that are available to you. YouTube has to be one of the best learning platforms in the world. There's not much you can't pick up and learn to do going on YouTube. So, for the bigger companies, time-poor professionals, I'm a good answer because that's what I do as I share people's stories and shape it, and we get I have a number of award-winning journalists who write for me, filmmakers who produce great video content as well, and we do a campaign strategy for what their thought leadership campaign will look like, and it is very different from the way that we've done it in the past, in that marketers have been out there and done the big hard sell. This is very different, and but it's, I think, more effective.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, it's a lot of work to try and figure that out on your own.
Yeah, that's right.
So the past couple of years, I don't know how much research I've done, tutorials, courses, everything I've watched and read and understood, and then just tweaking and experimenting to see what works and what doesn't. It's a lot of effort.
That's right. You need to put the effort into it, and there's amazing things that you can do. Like, for instance, just a little tip on LinkedIn is if you promoted something on LinkedIn, and you should really, if you're really serious about it, have a content plan for it. And that might include a certain number of videos and a certain number of straight posts and a certain number of sharing posts and engaging with other people who you're in your field or domain. Also, you've got your tagging, which is very powerful. But once you put something up, the great thing about LinkedIn, and this is why I recommend everyone really focus on their LinkedIn platform, is that as an individual of a company, you always keep your own personal LinkedIn profile. So you take it. Yeah.
It is separated, right, from the business. It can, and it's, so yeah,
That's
I agree
right.
with that.
So, your people are always, before they interview you for a potential job, they're always going to look at your LinkedIn and check out what you've done. You need to do things like, don't be shy on encouraging people to give you a reference if you've done some work for them, and do that in return, because it's about collaboration these days. So those things really work, and I do that myself. Like I'll give a reference to someone who I've worked with, and they'll return me the favour. Video reference is fantastic too. Anything with video gets you much more engagement. And I think anything with audio as well, because audio is the new video in a way.
Yeah, correct. Oh, we're moving, obviously, DevReady Podcast to some video, so you'll see your face on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Because I do agree that we just found a platform that works for us right now. So it's just changing the dynamic of what we're going to be doing moving forward. But you mentioned quite a bit around variety of content. I think something from our learning is variety is important. Is there a specific sort of formula that you have on variety of content, from video to post to writing articles, etc.? Is there something that you have in mind that could help people just think about a structure in terms of the way they might build a content strategy?
Yeah, so a good content strategy will always include video, but you can do polls as well. So really simple things like a poll, you can vary it with sharing a piece of content that you really like. Don't forget that you've got the ability to write articles So often what you can do, for instance, for your podcast, you could take a transcript of the podcast and run that as an article that you it's like a bit like having your own personal magazine within your own LinkedIn platform. Be really encourage, and you do this, but you give media packs to people who've appeared on the show. So give people the tools to help share what you've created with them, so that they can not just like what you've done, but encourage them and coax them to share it to their platform, which is very different from a like. Sharing to their platform, I've got over 11,000 followers. So if I like it, it's not so likely that someone's going to see that I liked it. But if I share it from my 11,000 people on the platform, then they're very likely to see it. If they creates the very first few lines of what you see, so make those the most impactful. Don't waste words at the beginning. Also, once someone has you've seen your content getting some engagement, engage back straight away. LinkedIn has some algorithms that basically say that if they see in the first hour engagement, then they're going to keep it higher for longer. If the engagement continues, sometimes I've noticed that the stories that have been most impactful for me have been the ones that there's just been a constant discussion around the content. And so sometimes that tantalising headline, tantalising first few lines, a question that's a bit open-ended, so you're inviting people, not just sort of saying a statement, but basically, posing a comment, a fact, and then making a comment from it, and then posing a question. These are ways of getting variation into your and engagement into your posts. And then once you do that, then as a result, you're going to get a lot more people reacting. And you want reaction because that keeps it on the keeps it up high in the feed for longer. And that's the great thing about LinkedIn, is that it's sort of where Facebook used to be for publishers about 5 or 6 years ago, or even 10 years ago. So those people who got in 10 years ago grew their Facebook family, if you like, community, really quickly. Like the ones who, like, I can tell you, Stay at Home Mum is a website that I know the founder of, Jodie Allen, and she has over 500,000 followers. It would be really hard to grow 500. Yeah, really hard to grow that now, because what Facebook has done now is to sort of, to grow your audience. They're really after advertising money. If you advertise, you go higher up the feed, and if you don't go up the feed. With LinkedIn at the moment, it's free. I don't think that's going to stay the same. I think that it's going to be easier now to grow your LinkedIn profile than ever, but that won't stay the same. LinkedIn will eventually reward those people who reward them with advertising.
From a payment perspective, yeah, they've got a few other monetization models built in the platform, recruitment side of things, which does hopefully keep the model as it is, but obviously it can change. It's a platform. It's not owned by us. Yeah. It's owned by
a business, Microsoft.
A big business now. Yes, exactly. Microsoft brought it out. So it can change.
And we saw that.
At the drop of a hat.
Saw that with Facebook recently. So I've had my Facebook platforms. I've got 40,000 on Carousel Facebook and 20-odd thousand on Women Love Tech's Facebook, and they shut them down for a period. And
is that because of the news blockage?
Yeah, any news site.
Maybe. Yeah.
I tried to change it, that personal blogging.
Yeah. Didn't work. Okay.
No.
They restored all of those, though, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did.
Yeah, they've
you're back up and running.
now. But what that showed us publishers is that it's like building a business on sand in a way. You've got to have more than one platform that you're working on. So, for instance, you have a podcast which is, no doubt amplified across Apple and Google, and it's really being pushed into different platforms. Then you've got your LinkedIn platform, and your other social media platforms. So that's good. You're spreading it out. But those people who are just putting content on one platform need to be advised that, it is like building a business on sand. It as you said, Andrew, it's not our platform, even though you sort of feel quite, you can have a really successful business from a platform, but it changes because you're not controlling the algorithms.
On that note, would you recommend that someone runs their own website, for example, as well? That's something that we do for the podcast perspective, but would you recommend publishing your own content and blogs on your own specific point of media? Because then you do control it. You can control the conversation. You may be able to link people back to, I know LinkedIn doesn't appreciate getting exported out of their platform. They want everything to stay in the one place. But would you recommend doing that as well rather than just sticking to the platforms?
I totally recommend a multimedia approach, and I think it's that 360-degree approach to media that will make you successful. I think it's been that way for a while, but not everyone deploys that method because it takes more work.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. You've got to you've got to pay for a website. You've got to upkeep it. You've got to understand SEO. You've got to, which is again why people get, people like me to help manage their profile, and people like you to build their, development platforms. So, but yes, that is the way to go. And you, whatever you can do that gives you more control, the better. And the other thing about a website is that you can run. I do this a lot. It's a bit of a trick. You run your first of all the link to your website, and then you leave it a little bit longer, and then you can run. Say you had uploaded a video to your website, then upload that video separate to the link to LinkedIn, and it's actually the same piece of content, but at no one time, it's like Twitter, LinkedIn, no one time is everyone on it, or are you capturing every eyeball that's there. So, on Twitter, I know people that will run content easily 3 times in a day, the same piece of content.
Oh, really? So just continuously repeating the same piece of content. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because
never tried that, I don't believe. No.
Yeah, it's worth doing that because you're capturing people at different times. And if they've seen it, they're just going to scroll past it in 2 seconds. But if they haven't seen it, then, or they've only just come on once during the day, then they're more likely to see it if if depending where it is on their feed. So 3 times and you spread it out over the day is giving you more chance of being seen.
So in terms of that then, would you obviously not more is better, but like what is the number that people should be focusing on in terms of how many posts they do, how often they need to be on these platforms to really get exposure? So what would you recommend there? You mentioned 3 a day potentially there. Some people are doing. Is that something you would recommend starting at, or what would you think?
No, I wouldn't recommend starting at that. I would recommend just as a basis of starting out, if you can, and it is a financial thing, but there are tricks again for doing video less expensively. So there's more filming platforms that you can use. You can film Zoom, through your Zoom meetings, and there are some other ones that are low cost, but you can film interviews, etc. Or there's another one called Studio Bucket, which is have you heard of Studio Bucket?
I haven't. No,
I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah, not yet.
So Studio Bucket allows you to keep all your video content, film yourself. It has a teleprompter, and it's very. You can then upload to a video editor. Will then edit the content, and it's easy then to deploy onto different social media. So there's the different types of platforms now available like that. So Studio Bucket's a bit like Canva, but for video.
For video, okay, interesting. Yeah, I might check it out. That sounds good.
There's a lot of tools out there. You just have to find the right one that fits the sort of content format that you want to create.
Yeah, and that will allow you.
I don't know how many we've tested.
Yeah, so that will allow you to do a lot more filming, and you just write your script and you can download it quite quickly, and then I would say at least if you can do 1 video a week and at least 1 shared piece of a good story that you've seen that you want to comment on, and I would say 1 article a week. So if you can just start there, that's the basics, and then start introducing something new every couple of weeks. So it might be doing a poll or or something like that. So the other thing is to check your analytics. Keep a tab of it. Use an Excel spreadsheet and just keep a track on what gave you engagement, what didn't. That helps as well. Look, there's lots of different tricks.
From the engagement and keeping a tab on it, that obviously helps with understanding which content works better than others too. So that's something that...
And the times are probably important too.
Absolutely.
Keep track of when you're posting and what gets better engagement when on average.
And actually, you start enjoying it because the analytics show, that's really well. I thought that was going to do well.
You have some random things too, though, that just you think, why did that work so well, and then others didn't? So it becomes an interesting thing to look at. It
becomes interesting, and then you have to analyze it because as a former editor, we had none of this analytics, and the reason we were paid good money as editors was because we were editors were always chosen because they had very good gut instinct about what would work and what would engage. And I used to have this sort of test that I'd say, if it was a good cover, it would be the cover that people would get off the bus to buy the magazine. Was it good enough for them to get off that bus and buy that magazine if they saw it in the streets, in the stand outside the news agency? And, it's a water cooler thing. That's the same sort of questions that you still ask those same questions like you would as a publisher or as an editor, because you are now a publisher. And I think that's been the biggest change we've seen in media, is that I come from the traditional publisher, editor, journalist background, but it's all been democratized now. It used to be that, for instance, as an editor, I would be the one who decided what was the cover and what would what my audience on the Australian Women's Weekly wanted to read, and I would really decide what stories they would get served, on the platform. And now it's really everyone has become publishers or have the ability to become publishers, and you're publishing, audio media, and now film media. So you've really expanded, and you've got the tools to do that, and you're able to attract really interesting, fantastic people. So you're now the new breed of media, effectively, and you mightn't think of like that, but you are.
We publish written, audio, and video.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't think of that at all, but I think to that point, starting out in business or as a thought leader, you need to really think like that. We are living in a world where people don't go and buy paper anymore. It's very rare. They're all online and they're all reading their content from an online source. And yes, you're just as much as a publisher as anybody else, or the Herald is still publishing the newspaper online. So, there is a lot of impact we can make. And I think when we start to realize that as business people, as thought leaders, it shifts the game a little bit and it shifts the thinking and the mindset. So for us, when we started, it was just, let's run a podcast. But then reality is a big focus needs to be put in this area because that's where everyone's going. They're online, they're looking for content, they're looking for help, they're looking for information that's going to serve them at the time. And if you're not there continuously, you might not catch them at the time and just be able to serve and help. So, that's a different shift. It's definitely a mindset shift that's happened in our business. Something that a lot of businesses can look at, and then leaning on the building businesses, building technology, need to promote this. Thought leadership is definitely an area that I would recommend getting into. There's plenty of medium that we can do that across.
And you also have to serve it in different formats, just because everyone takes in information differently.
Yeah, I don't sit there and read anything. So
read or listen or watch. It depends on the personality, what their day-to-day job is, when they can fit it in.
I know it's all sort of tailor-made now, isn't it, for your own timing and snackable content or content when on demand. It's so much better. I mean, I only have to look back to 25 years ago in media when I met someone who worked for a British TV station, and we were debating Sky News being 24-hour news service, and he was saying, that everyone wants to listen to the news on TV at 6 p.m. And I said, I don't think so. I like the idea of this, this new idea of being able to listen to media news, anytime you want. And we debated it, but he was convinced that would never take off. It would never be good. That, it was only 6 p.m. you would want to listen to your news for the day, because that's when we all did it. And
that's just what we all know, right?
Yeah, that's the way
the way it was.
That's the way it was, and that's what they knew. And they assumed, people schedule their life around
the news,
those moments.
And how far has it changed? I mean, it's just, but it's so much better, because we're getting to hear many more voices and opinions, and it's also fantastic for wanting to listen to things that are very much niche appeal. So for instance, thought leadership isn't, it's quite niche. It's not going to suit everyone. Then they're not going to be interested in thought leadership. But people in business who are interested in new ways of reaching out to their and grow their network, they're going to be interested in it. And if you're interested in learning, then you really do want to hear from people who are sort of, being successful in your field, what they've done. Hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And so that's grown, and we'll see more of that in the future, because it's a very honest way of it's sort of like a give. It's a win-win type situation where you've got someone who's willing to give up their knowledge, or and then for the people listening to it or reading it, they're learning so much, and that's just a wonderful thing.
I think you summed it up really well there in terms of what thought leadership is. One question that's always on my mind is, and I'm not sure if it's on anyone else's mind, but how do we separate a business branding from a personal brand? And where does it sort of cross over? How can people start thinking about that? Because generally when people think to market, it's generally around their business brand. This shifts the chasm, really. It's taking it to a different level about the person being the front and center. So how do you manage both, or where do you see that sort of going in terms of businesses moving forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Andrew. So it is really important to really think separately about where you are in the business ecosystem and the business. So when I manage clients, I tend to manage their business LinkedIn brand and their personal brand. And so I think about it a lot because, so I think that I would always lead, for instance, with the personal thought leaders, what they've said, and then I would react with a content piece about what they did or what they said, or the video that they did, and do it in a third person. It would be more sort of more personality would come out. Personality, I think, comes out in the thought leaders' brand positioning, because it's about them, whereas you've got to think separately about what that brand's identity is. It might be it's different in terms of, I suppose, characteristic and personality. And so one of my clients, for instance, has a brand that it's a frozen yogurt, and it's a very fun brand, and so you can have a bit of fun with the LinkedIn brand, and then the person who owns it's a female entrepreneur and called Cass Spees, and the brand is actually Twisted Healthy Treats. And so Twisted is fun, it's all about, so you can have fun with both of them. But Cass is obviously a very senior woman in business, and it's very much her voice that comes through when she tells the stories about how she's grown that business. So I think it really does take you do need to do quite a bit of work on how it is differentiated, but it should definitely be differentiated. And I think that the business can support the thought leader in terms of putting posts out that are, so if the thought leader has done a podcast, it should be supported on the business brand's platform. That's important.
Yeah, no, I think it's all about strategy then, and just sitting down and putting a plan together from both sides. A business exists for a reason. In the context of what we're doing, we've got businesses, podcasts, they all exist for different purposes and reasons. And I think what you lent on there is, make sure from a business page, put your business brand first, the why, and content that's really serving that and serving your customers. Whereas I think the personal side, it gives you the liberty from a personal perspective and talk about stories and your growth and insights across even different categories in different areas. So it does give you a bit more freedom. It's just something I like to ask the question on, because it is a bit of a sticky point when you own a business, and then how do you differentiate? So I really appreciate that sort of insight.
And I think it is about your personality, because you can. I think sometimes it's really powerful on a personal thought leadership brand, to admit when you've made a mistake. I've seen that really engage really well when someone has said, "Look, this is I've closed my business, it didn't work, but I'm going to bounce back," and or something that shows humility, or something that whereas the business brand you're not going to, it's not a personal distinction of it's different, isn't it? Because it's not human.
It's not human, it's a different thing. Yeah, that's a fair point, right? More human on the personal side.
You can be more
yourself.
Yeah, Anthony, I think you need to start sharing some stuff around Scotch and on LinkedIn. He's got a nice little following on the Instagram where he's a whiskey fan.
See, things like that, letting people know what your some of your likes are and passion points are outside of the work persona, and I think that's what's fun about exploring what your own persona is on LinkedIn, because I think people accept that it's like me. I've got the same thing. I've got so many different interests. I'm often supporting women in STEM. I spoke at Pause Fest on female founders, and pulled together 50 women talking about what International Women's Day means to them. So these are all passion points for me, and so I think people start following you if they feel like they know you a bit, and so those sharing of personal interests is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because it's not people, but a people. That's what LinkedIn is all about. It's relationship building, and when you have common interests, we build relationships, right? So it makes a lot of sense.
When you meet face to face, that comes out anyway. So you have to try and bring that across in all the media creating.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Now that we've sort of covered.
Sorry, I was going to say that's the great thing is when you do create businesses that partnerships that come out of LinkedIn, you probably already built a relationship that you get to know that person before you started, which is quite unique.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll start filtering out the people that don't want to work with you already. So it's a bit better, chance of moving forward with them anyway as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was going to say, now they've sort of covered like a strategy for how you should be promoting content in the different formats. For those who still aren't quite sure how to approach their thought leadership, what sort of content should they actually be creating? Or what should they be filming videos or speaking or writing about?
So it can be in sort of a whole umbrella approach, and that could include. So if they're doing things like podcasts, content with other people that they share that content, then there's the creating their own unique content. That might be where you're writing for websites, or you're writing for your own website, and or just purely for, say, LinkedIn on the article page, for instance. So there's different types of content that you can then look at, and I think it's always great to be sharing the content where you've been in a podcast or you've been interviewed, because I think that gives you additional credibility. If you're speaking at any events, make sure you're getting some publicity for that, and sharing that, or taking pictures. It doesn't have to always be the full fully highly promoted video content, but I would also advise that depending on the size of the business, that is a step in the right direction. So, it's what we do on Game Changers, where we provide a podcast. We do a number of different videos that can be used, such as what makes a game changer, where we ask each of the game changers what are the special ingredients that have helped them. We do another segment, which is what would you tell your younger self? So they reflect back on what would they have done differently, that the lessons they've learned, and then we do the actual storytelling of how their business began and how did they grow, and what are they proud of, and it's basic storytelling. So when you are doing filming, it is good to get different types of content from the filming. So really plan it wisely, because it's expensive. And then there's just the straight. I think you can sort of think like this, like what we're doing now. It's like a TV platform. So the boundaries around old TV is sort of like, it's really hard to get on TV. I worked at Channel 7, and I was inundated by people wanting to have their time on the sofa when I was working on Sunrise. But actually, you don't need that anymore. If you've got your own channels on different social media platforms, you're creating the noise yourself, and that's what I like. And that's what I like to encourage people to do, because the whole thing with thought leadership is that actually you're you're leading the conversation, and that's what thought leaders do, is that they lead the conversation.
And I think what you just said there, trying to get onto the sofa, you can create your own sofa, create your own audience, following, relationships, and have conversations with people that really care. Being on a big picture box, there's a 1% that might be interested. But within your own little network, you can get that percentage up really, really high if you're doing the right things and connecting from the right perspective. Yeah.
Podcast with 0 followers and 0 listeners.
Yeah.
We just
everyone starts
decided
from nothing,
to do it,
right?
and then we've actually got a little pocket where some people come and watch and listen.
Yeah,
excited to be on the show.
Yeah, you're not talking millions, but you're talking thousands, or 1,000 or 2 that come and listen.
People like that.
Yeah, and that's like monthly sort of listens, and that's a decent number for us to attract into. And by doing this, just sharing it out on LinkedIn, that's all we really do. Bit of Instagram sharing, and we don't advertise it at all. But I think people need to understand that this is an investment too, because an investment in yourself, your business, your vision, your passions as well. It's a passion of ours just to share stories and help people get to where they need to be, because in the end, it's all about helping. But that's one outcome. In reality, if you're going to build technology, you need to build a business, you need to build a profile, you need to be able to promote this thing, you need to know how to manage it, being in team, and it's all about the rest of it, really. So how do we get people a kin of all the information that they need to have to really kick this off? And that's why we brought it all together. And there's having that one little the sofa makes a lot of sense, because we might be talking to one person today, but that one person we could make a difference to. I think that's how you have to approach it.
Yeah, and the one person might be the next customer as well.
And I think
they've learned.
Another thing people sort of don't consider when they're doing that is the consistency. Because eventually, when you do get that following, people will look forward to hearing from you or seeing the content you're producing.
Yeah. So
just because you don't have that following at the front, unless you build up the consistency, then they won't know what to expect or when.
Yeah. So consistency is super important. So that's why a content plan is great, because you're delivering the content every Monday or every Wednesday. And at the same time, and then you're letting people know that it is Monday and Wednesday and maybe Friday, and then people will tune in and listen to it, and mix it up, the live content that you do, as well. So, there's, I think that the analytics, the algorithms really reward anything that's live. So play with different formats. I interviewed Michaela Lancaster only recently. She's the CEO of Spotify. And Spotify, as you know, moving more from, not just a music platform anymore, it's a podcast platform. They've had some very big signings with Michelle Obama and the likes, and Harry and Meghan even, with Archwell Productions. But what they're doing is using that platform to promote young influencers and give them a platform that they wouldn't have got otherwise. So Indigenous artists and poets and some amazing people. And what she was saying is that the trend for podcasts is changing changing the formats, and so the type of podcasts where it's a straight interview are becoming different, where people are actually tuning into getting questions from their audience and reacting to that live. And there's some of the things that we'll see in the future.
It's always evolving, right? So I think you need to just, and what Anthony just said there, committing to a process, and that's what, you need to do. You need to commit to a schedule and getting it done. But and look to change, because if you do the same thing over and over again, it gets a little bit boring too. So always look to evolve, and I think that's important in the whole process as well.
I think evolving your content is really important. Look at what you used to do. And I can give you an example. A friend of mine, Elise Strawn, she started my cupcake addiction. And she used to start by filming little cupcakes with a camera, downwards, and then she brought herself into it, making the cupcakes. She's got like 10 million followers now.
Wow. Okay. My
and
cupcake
she's really
addiction.
evolved her content. Like, she's realised that if she does a zeitgeist of it's the World Cup football, she'll do a football cupcake, or and she changes it up all the time, and even moves into different areas. So she's, there's some great examples of how people have evolved, and look at those people who are leaders in those fields of content, and then look at what they did and just challenge yourself a little bit. So challenge yourself. Look at by listening to, whether it's the other podcasters and what they're doing, and who's best in class, and then think about what you can do that's going to be different for your next podcast format.
Makes a lot of sense, Robyn. I think we'll end that there. I think it's been a really good conversation around everything all about thought leadership and how someone might start the process, some things to think about in terms of how to go about it, and getting some structures in play and strategy thinking around it too. So really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure just talking all about thought leadership in publishing. So really appreciate your time.
No, thank you, Andrew and Anthony. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And if anyone wants to find out about you, how can they reach out and learn about InProfile as well?
Yeah, so it's inprofile.com.au is the website, and I'm easy to contact via LinkedIn under Robyn Foyster.
Perfect, Robyn. No, thank you.
Then we'll put those links in the show notes for everyone and share them out.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Lovely.
Cool. Thank you.
Take care.